Vice Chairman Nina Lenz, head of the search committee, and Peter Stalker, treasurer.
And Dale Barber.
Dale Barber. Dale, I was looking right at you. Sorry. And Dale Barber, our secretary. Thank you. Welcome to all of you that are attending and listening from the community. Thank you very much for doing so. We have one item on the agenda this afternoon, and it is the Director Search Selection Committee process. And I'd like a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'll move it.
A second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Unanimously carried. Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you. Excuse me, Nina.
It's okay. I was like, maybe there is something I don't know. All right, so this is officially the first meeting of the selection committee, which will go through the process together to recommend a candidate to the full board for the board to then vote on and hire a new executive director. I thought it would be great to just start with introductions since this is the first time we're meeting, and have everyone just shout out their name and their role on this committee, so that we can all sort of associate the name with a face. So I am Nina Lenz, Teton County Library Board member. Dale, you want to go?
Sure. Dale Barber, Teton County Library Board member.
Mark Hendrickson, Teton County Library Board member.
Peter Stalker, Teton County Library Board member.
Grace is on mute. Grace, you are on mute. Can you say hello again?
Thank you.
Yep.
Grace Robertson, Teton County Library Board member.
And then Judy, do you want to do a brief introduction?
Judy O'Patroni, resident of Teton County and former chair of the Library Foundation Board.
And holds an MLS, correct?
I'm sorry?
You hold an MLS too.
Yes, I do. I've worked as a librarian.
And Maureen?
Maureen Sullivan, and I've been engaged to join the selection committee to help with the process. And I've also spent some time getting to know the context in which this work is taking place. And I've had a fabulous set of conversations with current staff, former staff, members of the community, some of you on this call.
So I've asked, our agenda is brief because the rules of the special meetings require that you only talk about what's on the agenda. So that helps us discuss a variety of topics today related to how we want to start this process and how we would like us all to move forward. I've asked Maureen to facilitate, as I think she will do going forward repeatedly for us. Being that she brings the most experience in these types of, she brings the most experience to this committee. And I've been relying on her to really lead us down this successful path. So Maureen, would you mind taking over now?
I'll be happy to do that. So in addition to getting to know the community, the library, and the context for this, I've also spent some time understanding the HR regulations and process for this effort. So that is informing how it is that I'm going to proceed in this meeting. As I always do when my job is to facilitate a meeting, I will do the best I can to move us along and make sure that we do not go past the hour. I do have a responsibility toward the end to turn the program back to Nina for closing. But the first thing I want to say is I believe we have 13 applicants. I waited until about 15 minutes ago to try to confirm that, but I have 13. And if that changes, you'll know that by the end of today. The purpose of our work in this selection committee is to carefully review the documents that have been submitted by these candidates, and for each of those individuals to do a careful assessment of their qualifications as they're presenting them in the documents. We have from most of them a resume, as well as the forms that the county requires be completed, and letters of application as well. So when you receive all of the credentials for the applicants, it will be important for you to take the time to review this carefully. And the county uses a really effective grid form, and one has been developed for our use that lists the position requirements as they are described in the brochure on that page that is headed "The Ideal Candidate." But particularly at the bottom of that, position requirements, what it is that we absolutely must follow, are listed there. And then I worked with Julianne Fries to identify other competencies that are important for this position that we should be able to assess through the documents. When you have a chance to look again at all that's described in the ideal candidate roster, you'll see that there are some things that we really have to determine, you'll have to determine through interpersonal interaction with the candidates and through the reference checking. But our first work is to really look at the paperwork that's been submitted and do that assessment. So the tool that's been provided is designed to make it easier for us to do our assessment. And in a few minutes, I will bring it up on my screen, share that with you so that you have an idea of what it is that contains and why I think it would be an effective tool. It's really important, and some of you who were at the board meeting when I first attended on March 18th will remember me stressing the importance of confidentiality. For those of us on this selection committee, it is critically important that we not share any information about our process as it's underway and the candidates that we are evaluating with anyone outside of the process. It really requires a firm commitment on the part of each of us to observe confidentiality. And this is important not only because we have that obligation to the applicants, it's also important because should any word leak out of this, it could lead to misinformation, and it could also lead potentially to us losing good candidates. And this is a small number. From the review that I've done, there are clearly qualified people, so that is very good news for us. But we want to make sure that we have a process that is of integrity, that observes confidentiality. What this also means is that we have to stay in our assessment with the documents that have been submitted. We cannot do any kind of personal research like doing a Google search or talking to people that we think might know these different candidates. Our work really has to focus on the documents as they have been submitted. The reference checking that will be important in this will be done at a later stage in this process. Our work right now is the evaluation of the applications as they have been submitted. So let me just pause there and see if there are any questions on the part of selection committee members. We can keep rolling. I'm getting encouragement. So one of the things that is really important for us to determine here, and we'll do this, I hope now, is by when do we think we can have completed this work? And I'm going to start this by asking if it would be possible to complete this by next week on the 15th or the 16th. Is there anybody who would have trouble getting the work done and submitting their assessment by the 16th?
We have a scheduled library board meeting on the 15th. And so the most convenient would be to discuss the candidates in executive session after that meeting. That is possible, but I understand everyone has their own process.
So I'll change my question, Nina, and ask it this way. Does anyone think they'll have difficulty being ready by the 15th?
Maureen, are you
Yes.
asking that we will have reviewed 13 candidates and put them onto a grid of evaluation? Is
Yes.
that what you're asking us to do by the 15th?
That's it. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it
It'll
exactly. And
be
the grid is really-
challenging.
Do you want, Maureen, do you want to pull up the grid and
That would probably be
share
good.
your screen so people can get a sense of whether they're reviewing 5 things or 100 things?
And now I have to see if I can share my screen.
I wonder,
Share your impression.
I didn't hear that.
I said, how about just share your impression of how involved that is?
Yeah, I have it in front of me. I don't see a place on this roster. Wait a minute, I might have it. No, I don't see that capacity here, but I'll describe it to you. When you see this, it is a grid form. The names of the applicants will be on the far left. And then across the top, first in blue will be the required qualifications, and they go direct, they're taken directly from the position description, and that's reflected in the ideal candidate description. And then there's a set of 7 competencies. And as I've described it, I worked with Julianne Fries to pull those out of the ideal candidate description, the ones that I thought we would be able to assess and determine based on what we are getting in the paperwork from the different applicants. And it is designed so that as we look at each applicant and we consider each of the different criteria across the top, we're prompted to indicate whether the person has it, whether the person has it to some degree or does not have it. And then there's a means to calculate points at the bottom of it.
and this is the exact same tool that has been used in all the other library searches. So Judy and Mark and Grace likely are familiar with this tool. Would you mind reading across the top what the 7 competencies, just
Sure.
so everyone knows?
Sure. So the first one, and they're vertical, so bear with me. Professional presentation and writing skills. Experience in developing public-private partnerships. Strategic planning and implementation experience. I just caught a typo. Experience in leading organizational change. Evidence of strategic and forward thinking. And experience serving as the public face of the library. Actually, there are just 6. And then, of course, there's a spot for notes. And all of this work that we will be doing individually is intended to really prepare us for effective discussion in that meeting in executive session, where we're really addressing the question, who among these are fully qualified? Who are the individuals that we want to recommend to the board be invited to go further in the process?
My
And
only issue is a logistics one for next week. I am leaving at 7 a.m. on the morning of the 15th, and we'll be phoning in to the board meeting from Denver Airport between flights. So I may have to submit my comments in written form to the committee if we're going into executive session after I'm on my next flight.
Okay. And there is going to be a point, Peter. I haven't raised this question, so there hasn't been a determination yet, but I have an assumption that at some point we're all going to be submitting our paperwork. It's part of the process.
That's fine.
So you can be the first.
That's fine. I have no issue with filling this stuff out by then.
Yep.
It's just
Great.
how I present it.
That's great. And I've had to do work out of that airport, so I know what you're facing.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Maureen, are you sending the documents digitally so we get them this weekend? Since I'm in Arizona, that's why I'm asking that question. And also,
Definitely.
will the executive session be accessible via Zoom?
Yes, all of these, Dale, I see you with your hands up, so I'm going to get to you next. All of these will be via Zoom, and traditionally, I believe that applications and resumes were given out physically with paper. We are going to email them. I mean, this points to an area that makes life more convenient for all of us. Let's all remember that it does open us up with confidentiality, like we of course, this is unsaid, but we would of course ask you not to forward that to anybody. It does make life easier to feel like you could give that information out. So I just say that knowing full well, we all know that, but Dale.
I think I have two questions now. I'd like to know just an estimate of how long each one of these applications is, how many pages that we're going to have to review. And then, I'm sorry, Nina, I didn't understand what you said about where you're going to send the email.
We're just going to send the applications, resumes, and a cover letter if there is one via email to all of the selection committee members. Normally, we would make you come pick that up via paper to sort of to save confidentiality over the email portion of the world. So it's just a different format.
Okay. So how long are these?
The applications are about 2 pages. I haven't seen that. I haven't printed them. I've just sort of glanced at them online, but I believe the application is about 2 pages, 2 to 3 pages. And then a resume and a cover letter is depending on how lengthy people choose to make their resume. So most people try to stick to 1, maybe 2 pages tops. And same with a cover letter.
Peter.
May I make a suggestion, since we're dealing in the abstract and only, I think, Maureen, you have seen the resumes?
I have.
Could we all say that we'll aim for the 15th, but subject to seeing what we're actually dealing with, I guess, later on this afternoon or over the weekend. If it's overwhelming, I think we'd like to have the opportunity to do a thorough job, and may have to push it back a little bit to accommodate people's schedules. That's not my intent, but we're doing a bit in the abstract here.
Nina, this makes me want to propose this. If once each person sees the set and knows what their work obligations, their personal obligations are over the next several days, if anyone believes they can't finish in time for the meeting on the 15th, they would let you know that.
That's fine
Is
with
that
me.
okay?
You know, I think I will just state, I'm comfortable with that. I have been hearing from various committee members that you want to set times as far in advance as we possibly can. So just keeping that in mind as well.
And I'm going to answer Dale's question as well. And the question that she's posed prompts me to make a suggestion. I think the range in terms of sheets of paper for each is somewhere between 5 and about 8 or 9. And here's my suggestion. When you get the set of information, I would propose that you consider starting with the resume. I found the resume to be so much more helpful to me in getting a really good sense of what the person would bring. The forms really are repeating in most cases what's in the resume.
And the application can be hard. I have only glanced at a few just to sort of see the number of people. The application I found hard to navigate, in my opinion. So I really relied on the resume and the cover letters to give me a sense of who these people are, and then look to the application for other details that maybe stand out through that.
Has there been a target date discussed of when the committee would like to extend an offer to a candidate? Do you have like a timeline? I haven't heard of any yet.
Yes,
I mean, obviously we need a director, but I think, as was pointed out, it would be good to do this thoroughly.
we, of course, I would like to give people as much time as they need and want, and that will get more complicated as we whittle down the candidates. We have essentially looked to wanting to do a first interview. All of this depends. So let's say we get through the applications on the 15th, we could potentially be doing a first interview via Zoom the week of the 19th or the 26th, depending on whether applicants are available or not available, how many we want to interview, how many we don't. We decide that don't meet our minimum qualifications. I think we would want to get down to 3 or 4 to do a first round of interviews. And then at that point, we would have to have another discussion about how we want to move forward with the top candidates, 1, 2-ish in my mind. And that's looking at the first couple of weeks in May. And this is moving a little forward. We would want to talk about what that looks like. I, for example, will be fully vaccinated by May 5th. So my willingness to have bringing someone here in person, meeting with them and being able to see them and bring them to the community, have the staff and the community meet them, all of that depends on what people are comfortable with and how they want to go about meeting the finalists. But ultimately, best case scenario, I think Deb is listening and can help my foggy memory, but I believe around the beginning of June, Deb is looking to do other things while she may still be available to us. It will not be in a full-time capacity at that point. So that's our hopeful deadline. Will someone be here June 1st?
That's very helpful. Thank you, Nina. I wasn't aware of some of that scheduling or Deb's wishes, so thank you.
Well, it would strike me that one of the big gating factors here is whether we have candidates within this current set that are sufficient and satisfactory to us that we're not going to have to try and redo something open. So I think again, as these Gantt charts go, the further down we go, the less we know. So until we get actually into the process. So I guess the first step is getting in this weekend and getting some of these, getting these applications in front of us, and then we'll have a much better feel.
And Maureen and Julianne and I did have a meeting to discuss whether we should reopen the process. And based on our initial review of the candidates, we believe that there are candidates here that could be excellent directors, but we are only 1 or 2 people. We need the entire committee to feel that way. So yes.
I think, Nina, we might be in a good spot once we know when we can have our first deliberation in executive session as the selection committee to really sketch out the rest of the schedule. We've got a tentative one, and I think we'll probably, particularly you'll probably feel a little bit more confident being more specific once we get there.
And we can block, I think once this committee is ready to go through, it's my feeling that once we go through the candidates at the next meeting, we will be able to say, okay, we need to block out these hours of time. We're going to interview 5 people. So we're looking at 10 hours of interviews. So we need to block out these times over the next 2 weeks to do that, or whatever that looks like. Yes. Dale or Grace.
Go ahead, Dale.
So I guess I have a question about the process in terms of contact with the applicants. Exactly how is that happening? How did we get these applications? I guess I'm sort of assuming we haven't had any contact with the applicants except for the applications, but I'd just like to hear a little bit more about, is that you, Maureen, or how is that taking place?
I believe all but one came directly through the application process. There was one person considering it who, when this individual saw the article in the local newspaper mentioning the possibility of my work with you, got in touch with me directly. And so I had a conversation with that person before that individual submitted their paperwork. And then they went ahead and submitted the paperwork.
I
And
believe,
one of the things you'll see when you see the application is most of them have indicated what the source for them was of knowing about the position.
Good.
And
Thank
I
And
you.
my
think
memory,
most-
Dale, is a number of them were ALA job list.
yes, that's what I was gonna say.
Oh, sorry.
That was fine. Grace, you had a question?
So we're going to get a completed grid to you. You're asking if we can do it by the 15th, which is our board meeting day. And so those would just be coming together. Would we have anything that warrants a meeting on that day?
I mean, technically, to have a meeting on the 15th, you would need to get it to us by the 13th or the 14th. So that we can look, at least initially, see if there's consensus among the group. Because what it may end up is that the top 3 candidates all right, you know, everyone, wouldn't it be nice if everyone has the same top 3 candidates at the top of the list? That would make your next discussion pretty easy.
Okay. I for one can say that the 13th is not reasonable. I can't do it. The 15th, there's a chance once I see the materials and look at that. But so whatever you're doing as far as planning another session after a meeting, as I recall, Nina, we can just put it on the agenda and decide to go into executive session at that meeting or not, at that board meeting or not. So you could just have it on the agenda. Maybe Mark wants to say something there.
No, you're accurate. We can put it on the agenda and choose not to go into it.
That's correct.
So do you want to tentatively say the 15th, everyone's going to do their best to get us as many or as their grid back to us on the 5th, the latest by the 15th. If we have a majority of the committee who does it earlier and the final one comes in and we're all in the same place, we can enter executive session. Judy, I will need you to be flexible, and Maureen as well. Given that you likely won't want to participate in our board meeting earlier, to hold that hour after our meeting, and then we could discuss the candidates at that time. If not, we should likely plan another time to meet either the 16th or the 19th, possibly.
May I suggest that since I'm not traveling on the 16th, I really feel it's important for us to possibly be all together by Zoom. Can we schedule this a date certain and a time certain for the sakes of Maureen and Judy on the 16th?
Great. Let's do, Grace, how are you feeling about being able to get things in the 15th, or would it just be better to have?
I will do that. I will do
Okay.
that, Nina.
All
I
right,
will.
so let's talk about scheduling time on the 16th to meet in executive session.
Yes.
Nina, I'm traveling the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And I'm available the 20th and also the 15th.
Yeah, well, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to be the person that, I just think it's fair to you, Judy, and to Maureen to get a date and time certain so we can have a meeting.
I appreciate that.
Mark, is it possible to switch the order of our board meeting on the 15th so that we go into executive session first and start the normal course of business afterwards?
Peter, I don't know the answer to that. Dale, do you have any notion on that?
I can let you know the answer to that. You guys get to set your agenda exactly the way you want to set your agenda. And the very first thing could be executive session to discuss personnel matter, which would be the director search process. And that gives us a certain time for Maureen and Judy.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
So
So
should we,
that would mean 8:30 on the 15th,
That's Mountain Time.
Mountain Time.
Okay, 7:30 Pacific.
So early. I'll buy you a coffee, Judy.
That's all. Thank you. I will have one though.
I'll buy you the second one.
So are there other questions for me or for Nina?
Materials are going to start arriving soon in our,
Yes,
in baskets.
yes.
And I presume since they'll be marked privileged and confidential, because our emails are subject to public disclosure otherwise.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, good point.
So can I do, not to violate any HIPAA laws, can I just have like a quick thumbs up or down of people who would be interested in person meetings with the finalists? Whether that be one standing at one end of the auditorium and the other standing at the other, or having breakfast or lunch or dinner. What is the comfort level with people being in person moving forward? Dale?
I would suggest that when we get to that point, that whatever we do the same thing for everyone.
You have
So
to.
Right. If there's someone who can't come, for instance, for whatever reason, and we need to do it on Zoom, then we need to do everybody on Zoom. So we just, we'll kind of probably have to wait and see in terms of, what people can actually do.
I
Right.
agree. I think the likelihood is the interest will be high for someone to actually come here. If I were planning to do that, take a job, I think it would be almost necessary given, but Maureen, maybe you have an opinion on that.
I think Dale makes a good point here, but I think what you were looking for, Nina, was an indication from the members of the selection committee in terms of their health, right? And the COVID implications.
Yes, just willingness. I guess the idea here is if 4 of you are not interested in being in person with anybody, then that will direct how we talk about this person moving forward. And I think it's fair for them to understand what that looks like. Given the situation we've been facing for the past year, I want to check in with people and make sure they're comfortable. I am at a point soon, will feel much more comfortable being in person with candidates than would ever have felt before. So
Having had my second shot, I'm fine. And I have access to a lot of science that's going on about all of this stuff. If anybody needs some reassurance that once you're
Okay.
second vaccination, you're pretty good. You're more than pretty good.
And perhaps, Nina, what might make sense is for people to just be in touch with you directly.
that's
their
fine.
thinking
No one
about
needs to out themselves here,
Right.
but I do think it's something we need to think about in the interim.
Nina, I have a question on a different topic, and that is more the process of returning our grids to you by the 15th. I do not have a TC Lib email, so I don't know if that affects anything. Just email it back to you. Okay.
Let me make a suggestion. Do we have a Dropbox that we've set up for this? And could we use that as our interface?
We discussed using Dropbox. I would have to set up something separate. The one that we have right now, staff has access to. So
But could we set up a separate one, or is that more of a pain?
I think it depends on everybody's comfort level.
It consolidates all of the email traffic into one place, which just strikes me as being convenient for all of us to do things, but whatever.
Nina, would you want to look into the possibility of that?
Sure. All right, so does anyone have any other questions about how to move forward? I think we haven't even scheduled a meeting, the next meetings. It sounds like it's gonna be on the 20th at this point. Which will give everyone a little bit more time to go through the applications anyway.
One thing that occurs to me, Nina, to be explicit about is, I think now that we are starting our work, if any one of us has a question or something comes up as an issue, it's going to be important for us to take it directly to you. That we're really going to be beginning our work as a cohesive group, and given your role, we should be coming to you. Does that make sense?
Maureen, like, could you give us an example of what you're talking about
Yeah.
or thinking?
Yes, let's say there's a question when you look at the competencies that have come up and you're not sure what it might mean when it says experience serving as the public face of a library. That's a question, rather than somebody in our group taking it to Deb or someone working in the library, that really should be discussed among us. And I'm suggesting that the question go to Nina, because then Nina, as the chair, is in a good position to decide if that's something that goes on the agenda for our discussions, or it's something she can quickly handle. We need to operate in a closed process.
Thank you.
And I'm anticipating, because I've seen this happen already in my work with the community, that there might be questions coming up about how we're doing this work. And those questions, if it's from any one of us on the selection committee, I really feel strongly need to go to Nina. Does that help?
Thank you.
Dale?
I agree, Maureen, that we need to keep this among the selection committee, that's very important. But I think particularly given the fact that we have your expertise specific to library issues, that it should be an option for people to ask Nina, and then she ask her if they can ask you. In other words, so that we can talk, you know, we can get to the expert. And I'm not saying you're not the expert, Nina, but in terms of this specific library issues, I think we have the expert, and I would hate not to be able to use her in that, you know, in this part of the process. And we can all keep a record of what we're doing. I mean, we probably should be doing that anyway. But I would hate to just have it be, you know, just a one-way street there, that we don't get that option. So I'm just suggesting that if we have a question, we pose it to Nina, and we could request, because this is a specific library question, we'd like to talk to Maureen about it.
And as long as Nina's the one who's making that decision, I'm fine with it.
I don't plan to keep anybody away from anyone that will help them get the information they need to make the decisions that we need to move forward. That is not on my agenda.
I think this was just a logistics matter with having a central collection point for questions, which, Nina, you're elected. That's great. The gatekeeper. That's wonderful.
And just to be fairly practical, with this tool and a fairly small number of applications, I think it won't be long before we're really getting into the discussion that we need to have. And that's where, Dale, I won't hold back sharing what I think and answering questions that come up. I'll be more than happy to do that.
Well, I think to Dale's point, I think we're being, you know, given the history of the library that you're familiar with now in the community, I think the issue of transparency and process, while being very necessary to be very confident, is one, giving the confidence to the community that we are all treating this with the seriousness and the depth and breadth that we were supposed to do, and that we have a process that can be as communicative and transparent to that community at the time is important. So I think we're all aware of that. It's just, it is important.
Yeah.
Well, and let's be clear, I mean, there's a lot of what is happening in this meeting could have probably happened over email. But Maureen and I think it's important, and given that the committee contains the entire board, it's important to have a lot of these discussions sort of sending us on our path and out in the open and in the public. And so I appreciate everyone sort of being patient with us as we show you how the sausage is made. And it's not always pretty or efficient or fast, but we continue to try and strive to be as open as we can, given the limitations that we face in hiring.
I have a question for either you, Nina, or Maureen, or anybody else who wants to opine, but really the people, Nina or Maureen probably is more appropriate right now. If the public wants to comment on the public part of the processes that we are doing, are we setting up a mechanism to channel public comments and respond to them?
I have an opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
I know one of the challenges that lies ahead for all of you involved is to get to a point where trust builds so people can go back to what their roles are and the work that's there in front of them. So I would say when you bring candidates to the final interview, you have community involvement in that, I think you want a mechanism for community input. I personally don't think there's a need for the public to comment on this process.
Okay,
I've never seen that happen. That would be so unusual.
And it was just a random thought that I had. So anyway, thank you.
And I can explain why. Because then it leaves some people thinking that this is part of their role, and it isn't.
Oh, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know Maureen has had numerous conversations with community members, as have I, and I think we've all left the conversation willing to continue those types of conversations moving forward. You know, sometimes just being heard it feels really nice. So we continue to do that in any manner that we can. But as Maureen said, the county has entrusted this board to set up a process that we are comfortable with, that we feel moves us forward in the appropriate manner. And at some point, we have to take ownership of that and move forward in the manner that is right for us.
Heated agreement.
So I will send out a poll for times on April 20th for us to have a meeting discussing the applicants. And then we will, during that meeting, we'll move forward in figuring out the blocks of times that we want to save for interviewing people over Zoom on the first round. And then we can talk about if anyone has any concerns or how we want to move forward. I would just love to know if there's sort of some absolutes out there about what you will and won't do. If you say that depends on the day, that's fine. Just a hint of what you're thinking about going forward would be really helpful in determining how we want to move forward with these candidates.
Nina, I'd just like to be sure I understand. So what are we doing on the 15th? Are we not going?
We're not doing, it sounds like given Peter's schedule and Judy's schedule, we're just going to have to wait till the 20th to, oh no, I'm sorry. That's right. You are right. 8:30, we're now moving. I'm sorry. I've been around the horn and coming back. At 8:30 executive session, we'll discuss the candidates. And then at that time we will move forward. I'm so sorry, everyone. I was just.
Okay. I just was getting confused with the 20th
I
because
clearly am getting confused.
Okay, I think we're going to try to do it on the 15th unless once we look at this stuff, one or more of us realizes we just can't get it done.
Yeah, and I
So-
would, if you could tell me that by Monday, I think that would be the best for us to be able to let people know. And let's hold the 20th as our backup date
Okay,
for if people just feel like there's way too much information to go through during the amount of time that before the 15th. So I apologize to everyone on this phone call.
okay, I just,
Nina, do you want to like set a time for the 20th that we could just put in our calendars to be confirmed? Do you have like a meeting time that works for most people?
How about 11 a.m. on the 20th?
Works for me.
fine.
Mountain time.
Mountain time. So that's 10 for you, Judy,
Thank you.
and 1 for Maureen.
Right.
Basic math in my head. So we'll save 11 o'clock on the 20th just in case, and I'll check in on Monday if I haven't heard from you. After that.
Nina, I'm traveling that day, but you don't, I'll get my information into you for sure.
Okay. And hopefully we won't need it.
You'll need his information, just not the date.
Well, I think Mark knew. I hope Mark knew what I was saying, but maybe not since I don't even know what day it is anymore. All right. Anything else? So the grid, Maureen, I'm right in saying the grid and the applications will all come in one email. Or the applications may have, depending on size of that email, may come in a couple, but
Or you may have to zip it.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. And if anyone has any trouble, please call me. Don't fuss over it. Just give us a call. We'll figure out how to get it to you in the best manner possible.
Great.
Well, Maureen, do you have anything you want to say?
I just want to say how well I think the meeting went. Things that you and I had not thought of came up from the group, which I think is great. And I'm always thrilled when a meeting can end before it's supposed to.
Well, and I know everyone is anxious to get started, and I appreciate all of you allowing us to take this time to just set us on the right course going forward. I look forward to working with you all, and I know we will have a wonderful outcome. So what a great beginning to this process that we've been waiting on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina.
Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you
Nina.
all, Maureen.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, do you need a motion to
Thank
it?
you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Grace.
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll
Second, please.
Got it. I'll second.
Peter seconds. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, everyone.
Uh,
Thank you.